Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Booknerds Podcast. I'm your host for today, Nidhi, and we have an amazing guest with us today, Mr. Sandeep Bamzai. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hi, hi. Nice to be here.
How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. And before we get into the conversation more, I would love to introduce you. And just by saying that how amazing your resume is, like from being a journalist to an author, working with the biggest media houses in the country, and working on so many books, along with the latest one, Gilded Cage, which is an ode to your birthplace. And I am so happy to be discussing it with you.
My pleasure too.
Okay, sir. So I would love to know more about you and all the works that you've written, because all of them seem so fascinating.
Yeah, so as far as the author's journey is concerned, it started sometime in 1997 when I wrote the first one, and that was for Jeko Publications. It was a book on cricket, which was followed by a second book, which was commissioned by Rupa. Mr. Mehra of Rupa had commissioned the book, and it was an extremely popular one. It was called Bombay Cricket Story, Guts and Glory, the Bombay Cricket Story. And this appeared in 1999. And then there was, of course, a lull because as a journalist, it's pretty much impossible to get the time to sit down and write a book. So the next one came along in 2006, which was actually the first of the trilogy. The trilogy now being complete with Gilded Cage. It was called Bonfire of Kashmir, 2006. And then there was a huge, long hiatus from long form writing, as it were. And the next one came in 2020, which required almost 3.5 years of research. And it was titled Princestan, again published by Rupa. And God was kind, and I got the Book of the Year award from Kalinga Lit Fest. And then the third and final part, like I said, of the trilogy, Gilded Cage, has come out in early Jan 2023. Uh, and the next one, hopefully, will also not take time. It'll be a pictorial history on Kashmir.
Wow, thanks for letting us know. It has been a very long and fruitful journey, I would say. And
Yeah,
every work is so interesting. And most of your works has been nonfiction, and
yeah,
nonfiction is a world of its own. But
true.
your writing seems very theatrical and poetic, honestly. And I would like to read some lines for reference from your book, which is Kashmir was a mighty volcano, a vast land of seething discontent and human suffering. It's
Mhm.
very descriptive, sir. So I want to know, was that a conscious choice while writing it?
Well, actually, the the Gilded Cage is far removed from my writing style as far as Princestan or even Bonfire of Kashmiriyat are concerned. I've deliberately chosen to write in a distinctive style where I'm following I, what I believe is writing fiction. But uh, the narrative is obviously non-fiction. It is a deep dive research into a whole lot of papers, documents, correspondence, aid memoirs, exchanges between the top political leaders of the time. And I've written this in a faster sort of pace so that people don't get bored. uh, and from what I gather, from what people have told me, they've actually liked this style of narration. They believe that the narrative is fast paced. They believe it is written like fiction, although all the dramatis personae are eminent historical figures, and every single line in the book is based on fact and, like I said, deep dive research. In fact,
Yes, sir. So,
the immersive aspect. of writing history is something that is most interesting because I'm not a history student. I studied economics in university. So I am now completely besotted and obsessed by history, and more so history around India's freedom struggle, history around obviously Kashmir's controversial accession. So I have chosen to look at these aspects because I firmly believe that uh, there are a whole set of people who have not got their due as far as India's freedom struggle is concerned. And in whatever small way I can contribute, I want to bring forth into public domain this hitherto unknown facet about Indian history and the millions of freedom fighters who actually contributed to our freedom struggle and won us independence.
That's true, sir. And as long as the book is concerned, it is very information packed. As you mentioned, there are very various references and letter exchanges. And this is what has been very interesting to me because I want to know about the research process. How come like a book like this come about? How do you go about it, researching it, and how it takes place?
So you'll be surprised. The National Archives were a big disappointment. Nehru Memorial was also a big disappointment. And the research is essentially predicated on the documents, the letters, the correspondence, the 8 memoirs that my grandfather bequeathed to me uh, when he just before he passed away. And these files, which go back in time and are almost 75, 77 years old now, uh, this is the fundamental edifice of the research. But what makes this research even more complicated is that you can take a document, read the document, but how do you connect the dots with the next document? How do you build a narrative? How do you write a story? As a storyteller, even as a journalist, or uh, subsequently in my career, I became an author, and now I've been an author for pretty much 25 years. 1997 is when I wrote my first book. So to build that narrative, to tell that story, to read everything and then research every aspect in what you've read, and then to connect the dots with the next paper, document, or letter or correspondence, get the dates right, get the information right, uh, focus in on the players of the time, who said what. That research is it takes its own sweet time, and it's like I said, Princess Tan took me almost 3.5, 4 years to write because it was extremely complicated. There was too much information floating around, and to actually buckle down and put it all into print is a very difficult process. I must also compliment the editors on this particular book because I think they did a smart job uh, focusing on the completely hitherto undocumented aspects of Indian history. And Kapish Mehra of Rupa told me that voluminous books are out. Nobody has the time. Screen time is dominant these days. Nobody reads books, and he actually provided the pointers, in fact, for what I've done finally, which is to write a simply told story, not voluminous, not overbearing, but fast paced. And perhaps, I don't know, perhaps I've succeeded.
Yes, of course. And specifically, the descriptions, as I mentioned earlier, are very fascinating. They draw the reader in and they make you think, okay, there are so many characters here, it almost feels like fiction. And
Hmm.
onto the characters, there are so many powerful characters in the book. Each one of them is a known figure. So I am very interested to know that why one of the leading figures that you chose were Sheikh Abdullah, when the most of the primary responsibility of Kashmir fell onto the shoulders of Maharaja Hari Singh.
No, it's again done extremely deliberately because the book is divided into antagonists and protagonists.
Yes.
The people, it's a, like I said, it's a simply structured story, but you have to understand the nuance with which I'm writing, which is that on one side are Sheikh Abdullah, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel. On the other side are Maharaja Hari Singh, Ramchandra Kak, Guru Sant Deo, the shadowy, sinister figure in the court of Maharaja Hari Singh, and of course Muhammad Ali Jinnah. You cannot ignore. If you ignore Muhammad Ali Jinnah in any story on the accession of Kashmir, you do so at your own peril. So this is how I've structured it. The antagonists are
Hello, sir. I think I've seemed to have lost you there. Hello?
I said the construct of the book is based entirely on that. And if you read the book, it starts with Sheikh Abdullah, and the title itself is very clearly articulated. It says years that made and unmade Kashmir. So I have taken 1931, where with the this is the emergence of Sheikh Abdullah. He rises from serfdom and the masses to become a popular leader, and the treaties ends in 1953 when he is arrested in Gulmarg for actually thinking and contemplating independence of Kashmir. So the the book deals with those 22 years, and originally the title was 22 years that made and unmade Kashmir, but I convinced the commissioning editor to drop the 22 and stick with years that made and unmade Kashmir. So it starts with Sheikh, it ends with Sheikh, but it traverses the entire gamut. Maharaja Hari Singh, Ramchandra Kak, Guru Sant Deo, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel. Of course, there's Muhammad Ali Jinnah right at the outset, because people forget that Jinnah came to Kashmir in 1944 and he parked himself for almost 55 days, and he tried his level best to convince uh, Sheikh Abdullah, who dodged him right through. Sheikh Abdullah dodged him uh, because he knew that Sheikh was the most popular leader in Kashmir, and that his own Muslim conference, which owed allegiance to his Muslim League, was not such a big political force. The National Conference was a bigger entity. Sheikh Saab himself was a much taller leader, and he tried his level best to draw a bead on Sheikh Saab, but Sheikh dodged him repeatedly right through those 55 days. So Jinnah tried everything. He tried um, uh, brinkmanship. He tried populist speeches. He invoked Islam. He met leaders of the National Conference. He met Muslim conference leaders. He tried his usual subterfuge. Nothing worked.
Wow, that's true. And you have mentioned the getup of Sheikh Abdullah in way as well. I would like to read it. His dress was Spartan and his way of life exemplary. I really like this description. Again, it connects with the similar way, as you've said, you've tried to make it fiction. And with that, I also want to come to the foreword, which is one of the crowning jewels of the book. And how that come about, given that Maharaja Hari Singh has been featured in the book and not as favorably, but the foreword is very, descriptive. So I would love to talk about that as well.
So I God is kind. Dr. Karan Singh is very favorably disposed towards me. Uh, we have long conversations on politics, on OTT, web series, and he's an avid fan of what he's a big watcher of web series. He's extremely alert. He has an amazing memory. And I went and saw Dr. Karan Singh, and I told him that I think a book of this magnitude requires a forward of His Eminence, and he had a long conversation with me, based on which I wrote the forward, and then I ran the forward by him, and he made certain corrections and additions, and even deletions, and finally the forward took shape under his signature, and if you read the forward, it is absolutely fascinating because he tells you that when the Mahura power plant was burnt by the raiders, the Afridis who drove down from Muzaffarabad, they burnt Mahura, and I think the book says and the facts say that it was Diwali, and there was a huge function in the palace, and
Yes.
the lights went out because Mahura was burnt, and then Maharaja Hari Singh was told by his aides that the raiders were knocking on the doors of Srinagar, and Maharaja Hari Singh and his entire family, including a young Karan Singh and his wife Maharani Tara Devi, the retinue of servants, courtiers, everybody, they bundled into their cars. Hari Singh drove his own car himself in the night when they were stampeded, and he drove down from what is a very difficult road, Srinagar to Jammu. He had his friend Victor Rosenthal with him in the car. All this is mentioned in Dr. Karan Singh's forward, and it's
Yes.
the forward actually gives you a peep into the book and all the dramatis personae. The fact that the Congress was extremely antsy, they knew that Kashmir needed to accede to India and not Pakistan. For Nehru himself, it was a shop window. Uh, the president of the Congress, J.B. Kriplani, Acharya Kriplani, as we know him, was sent to Kashmir. Uh, the Maharaja refused to meet him. Uh, his prime minister, Ramchandra Kak, fobbed him off. Mountbatten, Lord Louis Mountbatten, Viceroy of India, then went to Kashmir to meet Maharaja Hari Singh, and he too was fobbed off by Maharaja Hari Singh. Maharaja Hari Singh refused to meet him, claimed that he was unwell. He was sent to uh, a remote location and asked to fish for trout, where he was so frustrated that he swam buck naked. These are historical facts. You cannot ignore these facts. And then finally, Mahatma Gandhi visited Kashmir to talk to Hari Singh and to convince him to accede. He sat under the the tree. Maharaja Hari Singh at first refused to meet him. He refused to meet Mahatma Gandhi, and it is Maharani Tara Devi who convinced. And this is all borne out by Dr. Karan Singh in the conversation with me, as also in the forward. Maharaja Hari Singh refused to meet Mahatma Gandhi. Tara Devi told him that this is not an ordinary man. This is the Mahatma who has come calling, and there is no way you cannot you cannot meet him. And finally, Hari Singh met him in the garden under the tree. Goat's milk was offered to Gandhiji. Gandhiji had a conversation with him, but nobody really knows what transpired in that conversation. Although it is believed that he tried to convince him that he should accede to India, but he failed. And then finally, Guru Golwalkar went to Kashmir, the RSS Sarsanchalak of the time, and he met Maharaja Hari Singh. And I think this is as uh, independence came on August 15. I think, if I'm not right, if I'm not wrong, uh, Guru Golwalkar came as late as August 12th, and even he tried to convince Maharaja Hari Singh. Maharaja Hari Singh was not convinced. He went into overtime. Kashmir, of course, acceded much later on October 26th. But Gandhiji's visit did one thing. Kak and all the courtiers who were opposed to India in Maharaja Hari Singh's court were knocked off. Janak Singh became the prime minister for a brief while, and then, of course, Meherchand Mahajan became the prime minister of Kashmir, chief justice, later to be chief justice of the Jammu and Kashmir High Court. Uh, so that is the history of and the events as they unfolded.
Yes, wow, sir. First of all, I would like to comment on the memory. It's incredible, everything point to point, and of course, written so many books about it, and have done research for so many years. Of course, amounts to that. But anyway, the and at the very end, you also had mentioned that Maharaja Hari Singh signed the accession document with the help of Sheikh Abdullah, and that is another one of the poetic descriptions that you have mentioned, and that is something I just wanted to point out here.
No,
So
Mountbatten is on record as saying that if Maharaja Hari Singh had signed the instrument of accession, see, let me give you a bit of a background on this.
yes.
When the two dominions were created, the 565 princes were asked to sign standstill agreements in favor of one or the other, the two dominions being Pakistan and India. Hari Singh chose to sign the standstill agreement with Pakistan, not India. It is believed that he signed the standstill agreement with India also, but it was sent via Rawalpindi and it never reached New Delhi.
Okay.
So if Mountbatten, as I said, is on record as saying that if he had signed the instrument of accession on August 14th, then history would have recorded these events differently. Pakistan would have never been a player in this at all, because August 14 would have meant that one day prior to India's independence, he had formally signed the instrument of accession in our favor, and that was it. But he chose not to. And the reason why he chose not to sign the instrument of accession was not that he wanted to join either Pakistan or India. He wanted to remain free. He had always thought of being independent. And it is Kak, and then later, and even in parallel, the sinister figure of Guru Sant Deo, who had a huge hold over Maharaja Hari Singh, as also Maharani Tara Devi, who used to always try and convince Maharaja Hari Singh that why should you why should you join hands with India and Pakistan, India or Pakistan? Why can't we remain independent, wedged between the two? And he actually thought of a name. It was called Dogristan. He actually thought that they could remain an independent country called Dogristan. And Hari Singh, along with the Maharaja of Travancore, the Nawab of Bhopal, the Nizam of Hyderabad, and one or two other princes, big princes. Please understand that on August 15, 1947, undivided Jammu and Kashmir was bigger than France. It
Okay.
was a huge state and a huge mass of land. So he actually thought that why can't I remain independent? Why should I align myself with one or the other? So this thought process continued in his mind, and that's how it was extended. Jamnagar is another princely state which actually saw a referendum take place, and in the referendum, 97% of the people voted in favor of India. But the earlier book, the one prior to Gilded Cage, that book deals with these notorious princes and how they too tried to create a third dominion, which in this case was named Princestan. And Churchill, Lord Wavell, the viceroy before Mountbatten, Sir Conrad Corfield, the political department, the British political department, which controlled all the residents and basically controlled all the courts. in not the legal courts, but the courts of the princes and the rajas and the maharajas. They actually conspired to keep a bit of India. These are Churchill's own words, which are documented in my previous book.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. We have a question here. I would like to read it out to you. Shweta Rani wants to know your point of view on Nehru's Muslim appeasement favoring Sheikh Abdullah. His friendship with him, that was more harm than good for Kashmir and migration of Kashmiri Pandits.
This is all a misnomer. If Sheikh Abdullah had not been there, India would have never got Kashmir. Please understand that, and history records this, and unfortunately, we choose to ignore history. Uh, and again, like I said in the past, and I've said this repeatedly, we choose to ignore history at our own peril. Nehru created an entity called the All India States People's Conference, which was basically a stalking horse, which wanted to enlarge the scope of the democratic process in the princely states, where there was uh, basically these princes were demigod, or at least they thought they were demigods, and they ran
Mm.
roughshod over the populace. And the populace lived in what can only be described as subhuman conditions and serfdom. So Sheikh Abdullah was vice president of the All India States People's Conference. He was used by Nehru to further the democratic process. The National Conference was diametrically opposed to the theological and ideological Islamic ideological doctrine of Muhammad Ali Jinnah and his Muslim League. Sheikh dodged Jinnah for 55 days in 1944 when Jinnah came calling on him. Hari Singh also dodged him. Ramchandra Kak also dodged him. And if Sheikh Saab had not been there, Kashmir would not have been part of India. Today India is morally, ethically, constitutionally, uh, Kashmir is a part of India. You cannot, it's an irrevocable fact and you cannot ignore it. But it wouldn't have happened without Nehru or Sheikh Abdullah.
Okay, sir. Thank you for that. And I would like to process this more there, since we're talking so much about books, and I was very mentioned the writing style, and I would love to know what is your favorite book or author, and has they ever made into your writing?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last bit.
If they have ever, your favorite book or your favorite author, have they ever made into your writing, in your books?
I used to love reading Dominic Lapierre and Larry Collins. And I think Freedom at Midnight, I mean, there are people who scoff at it, but I think some of their books were outstanding. And Freedom at Midnight, the way it's been written, is super. It's non-fiction, but it's fiction. The stylistic writing is marvelous, and
So,
I always read all their books, but I have, like I said, not been a follower of history writing. I have always loved reading fiction, and some of my favorite authors in fiction have been people like Ludlum, etc.
so
Alistair
is that
MacLean
okay
when I
to?
was growing up, Desmond Bagley when I was growing up. I was a great believer in westerns. Louis L'Amour was one of my favorite authors. Sackett was one of my favorite characters. Zane Grey was another western author. I used to love reading westerns.
So, is it safe to assume that your love for fiction has what brought the drama and the theater in your book? Is it okay to
I don't
assume
know,
that you
maybe
that choice?
subliminally, yeah, maybe subliminally it has influenced me, but it's not deliberate.
Okay. And also, I would want to know, you mentioned that you have a new work coming up soon, and can you give us more brief about it?
About what? Sorry.
About your new work that you mentioned in the very beginning. You have a new book coming out.
Yeah. So I've started work on it, but it'll take some time because it's a very big project because I'm going to look at the history of Kashmir, not just the immediate history of the last 75, 80 years, but I'm going to look at the history of Kashmir right from Raj Tarangini, from the time that the Afghans ruled Kashmir, from the time that Maharaja Ranjit Singh ruled Kashmir,
Okay.
uh, right up to the Dogra dynasty, and so on. So it's a it's going to be a long process of first research, which I've started, and then the writing part, because you cannot do research and writing at the same time. First, you connect the dots, put put all your thoughts in order, and then construct the chapters, and then take it forward from there. So this will be a pictorial history, and it'll. I'd like to believe that it should be an interesting. I personally think it'll be a change from just gray. The last few books are all gray.
Yeah.
I think adding pictures and telling the story with pictures will make a huge difference this time.
Okay. So, and would you be participating in the artwork, in the illustrations as well?
So this book has been commissioned by Pramod Kapoor of Roli Books, and he will organize, or he's organizing all the pictures, etc. And he has a terrific library, and his reach is quite large. So he'll get all the pictures together. I'll do the writing.
Oh, sure. We will be looking forward to it. Thank you so much. And I would like to thank you for joining us today and imparting so much knowledge and talking about your book, which is amazing. First of all, I really loved it. I'm not a huge fan of history. I'm sorry to say that, like a lot of people, but the fiction in it really grabbed me. And that's why I really wanted to talk about the writing style and, the way you've made it so much dramatic. And that is what kept me going and made it so thrilling with all the characters. So thank you so much for all of that.
My pleasure.
And it was great talking to you.
My pleasure. Nice to be here.
Okay. Thank you, audience, for joining us
Thank you.
today.
Thank you. Thank you.